my colleagues some time to raise their feet, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let me see. Kris Faafoi. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know you had an option, so thank you very much. Mr. Chair, can I first of all begin by acknowledging the men and women of our fire service, some of them who will be busy tonight and last night dealing with weather-related call-outs. And I will make a point later on in my contribution as to why I think that this Parliament needs to seriously consider the SOP under my name for this piece of legislation because of what might be happening right now, especially in some of the flooded urban areas where the silting up of fire hydrants may be a real issue. Mr. Chair, I do have an SOP for this part 2, and I just want to give some real plain English context to it. Every 5 years, I understand, and I acknowledge Carl Mills from the Plympton Fire Brigade in the gallery too, the fire brigades in my area have to go and check the fire hydrants in the area. My understanding is that they have not done that for the last at least 10 years because of issues around traffic management plans and the issues and the red tape in and around it. It's essentially too hard for them to be able to do it, especially for volunteer fire brigades. The reality of that, Mr. Chair, is that, and I don't like to say this, it alarms me, is that when fire brigades turn up to an issue where they may need the fire hydrant, there is a degree of luck involved as to whether or not the fire hydrant is actually usable. Now, that's not just in my area. It may be in and around other parts of the country where the situation is the same because the local fire brigades have chosen not to check fire hydrants because of the onus of traffic management plans on them. So if they ask to check a fire hydrant, they will rock up, and for every hydrant they check, they are expected to have a traffic management plan to make sure that they are safe in and around that fire hydrant. That task is onerous, and I think I've spoken about this already in some contributions to the bill, and I think needs to be sorted out for a number of reasons. The first reason is public safety, because it is a real issue, and there was a call-out, I understand, in mid-February this year in my electorate where there was potentially a fire, and the fire brigade turned up to a potential fire call-out at a motel. They went to the fire hydrant, Mr. Chair, to be able to use it, to be able to plug the hose in, and it was silted up because there was flooding in that area some time before. So that fire hydrant was unusable. If the building had been on fire, they would have had to go to another fire hydrant 300 metres down the road, and if it wasn't silted up, like the fire hydrant that they checked first, then they would have been able to use it. But there's pure luck involved in that, because if it was flooded and silted up, then they couldn't use that too. I wouldn't want to be the owner of a property where the fire brigade couldn't use the fire hydrant outside my property because it was silted up, because the local fire brigade chose not to check it because of the impost of a traffic management plan on them. And that's why I think this legislation needs to include this, because we need to have confidence that our fire brigade are going to be safe when they're checking those, and, Mr. Chair, that the fire hydrants actually work. There's another issue that I want to raise with the Minister and the Chair around this, because we expect those fire brigades to be out there working, and they're not checking those fire hydrants at the moment. And my question to the Chair is that if you will require traffic management plans of fire brigades, can I ask what your understanding of the situation is when police set up checkpoints? Because if our police are setting up checkpoints at the moment and are not requiring a traffic management plan, why is there a different standard for the police and another standard for our fire brigades? Because I think they're essentially doing the same thing. They're using the road for a purpose. It's not an emergency in this case. They are going to a site to set up potentially a drink driving point to test people on the roads using that road, and I want to know what the onus on the police is around the traffic management in that area. Because, Mr Chair,
Kris Faafoi.
because the police and the fire service are two Crown entities which this Parliament goes out and asks to do certain duties to keep the public safe. So if we're going to ask the fire brigade to go out and check fire hydrants and carry out training on roads and require them to have a traffic management plan, is the same rule in place for our police? And if not, why not? And do we have to standardise this for agencies or Crown entities like the fire service and like the police? Because I think we may have a bit of a mismatch here. My understanding is that if the police want to go and set up a checkpoint, is that they don't have to have a traffic management plan. They make an assumption that what they're doing needs to be done, and they will go and do it. If the same standard is going to be asked of the police that we are requiring of our fire brigades when they are using the roads, not for emergencies but for training and testing purposes, I would suggest that the police, every time they set up for a checkpoint, have to go to the local council to get a traffic management plan. My assumption is that the police wouldn't like to do that, because if those were publicly notifiable, you'd know where they are. And I would also expect that they want to do things quite quickly and respond with some urgency, so therefore wouldn't have a traffic management plan. So my question to the Minister is there a standard that can be met? And if not, I think the SOP that I have in my name to put the onus in legislation for there to be a code of practice around traffic management and to give a degree of control to fire brigades when we are doing testing and training on the roads needs to be there. Because if it's good enough for the police to go out there and do whatever they need to do without a traffic management plan, because they know they have got some criteria to keep them safe, why isn't it the same for the fire brigades? It is my understanding since 2015 that water testing and training on roads was nationally prohibited by the New Zealand Fire Service if brigades didn't have a traffic management plan. So at the moment, if you don't have a traffic management plan and you're in a fire brigade, you aren't doing any testing or training on the roads. I think that has real safety implications. And I go back to the issue of basically testing the fire hydrants. There is an expectation, and I understand an obligation, on our fire brigades to keep those hydrants, to test those hydrants and check that they work. And if we as a House are ignoring the practical issue for fire brigades right now to make sure that they can do that work, and those hydrants aren't working, and a fire brigade turns up to a fire and can't use the hydrant in front of a house that's on fire because there's an issue with it, like it has been silted up or it is non-operational, and that brigade doesn't know that because they haven't tested it in 5 or 10 years, then I don't think we're doing our job well enough. And to say to leave it to the new entity to sort it out, I don't think is enough. I think we need to put it within the legislation that there is a code of practice working with local authorities and working with a transport agency, so we have an understanding of what goes into whatever traffic management plan that we can assume that those fire brigades will adhere to, and let them get on with it. Because the real implications are that some fire hydrants around the country are probably not operational now because they can't be tested. So the amendment and SOP that I put in my name here looks to do that, to put the onus on the new entity to make sure that this issue is sorted out. Because, to be fair, if we don't, then nothing could happen and the situation will carry on as it has. But I certainly don't want to be a Member of Parliament that knows about this issue and then for an event to happen where a hydrant doesn't work and something happens that we don't want to happen. So unless the Minister can assure me that this issue is close to being sorted out, I would hope that this Parliament could seriously consider putting an obligation on the new entity to make sure that this happens, to make sure when a fire truck turns up outside your house and once they hook up to the hydrant works, because at the moment this House can't guarantee that.
Mr. Chairman. Damien O'Connor.